Now, I probably mentioned the abstract at the beginning of the year when we first started talking about the research paper. And I think some students get that confused to mean that, because I do mention that it is on the second page of the research paper. And I think that confuses some students to think that they have to do the abstract before anything else. Well, actually, that is the opposite, complete opposite of what an abstract is and when you're supposed to do it. You're not supposed to do an abstract. You're not supposed to write an abstract until you have completed the research paper, and then you write the abstract. It's like the last thing that you're supposed to write. And however, although it is the last thing you're supposed to write, it is the second page of the actual research paper, the physical document that you give the teacher or the professor. So today we're going to talk about the abstract. However, if you have yet to complete your research paper, or your group has yet to complete the research paper, don't try writing the abstract now. Wait until everything has been completed and then write the abstract. And as we go over how to write an abstract, you'll understand why I'm actually saying to do it that way. Okay, so so what does the abstract do for your paper? And this is a valid question. Now, what it is, first off, is a first impression. It's a first impression to the reader of what you have written, why you have written it, and what it took for you to write it, what it took for you to actually do the research paper. So in an abstract, you're going to provide the reader with like an overview of what you have done or what you have discovered. Okay, so it's not going to be in any detail. You're not going to be stating any claims. You're not going to be providing any source material, nothing like that in an abstract. It's just a general overview of what you have done, what the reader is about to read, and why you did what you did, essentially. Okay, so it helps the reader, whether you're having another student or a teacher, figure out quickly whether the paper qualifies for a grade or whether it is worth reading. And if the area or the topic in which you are or you have written a research paper, if it has been treated significantly. A good abstract will give the reader that answer those questions right there on that page. Okay, it also tells the reader about the nature of the research, the type of research that you did, and it gives also the reader some insight on what you went through when you wrote the research paper. Okay, so of course it's going to go over the main points of the research, but I want to emphasize, and I'm going to keep emphasizing, that it's not going to go into any detail. And that's a really important point. Like I said, it is a first impression of what you have done in your research paper. Okay, so the abstract. Similar to a movie or a trailer or a blurb being that information on the back of a book that helps you decide whether or not you want to buy the book or whether you're interested in what the book is about. It's similar to that because it gives like a summary of what the research paper contains. It gives like the essence of what you were trying to do or what you were trying to discover or what you were trying to prove. But it in itself has to make sense. In other words, if someone were to read the abstract, they would really get the essence of your research paper, or they should get the essence of your research paper without even reading the research paper. So it should be a document that stands alone, that it doesn't need the research paper to say what it is saying. It allows whoever is reading it to get a really good idea of what is contained in the research paper. So here are the points to consider when you're thinking about what an abstract is. It's a very condensed version of the paper. It just highlights the major points. It concisely describes, and concise means that you're not going into any detail. It concisely describes the content or the scope meaning what you had to do in order to do the research. It reviews the material that you have in your research paper. It sets the tone of the research paper. It gives the reader an idea of, not directly, but an idea of what your attitude is towards the topic that you have done the research on. It's supposed to be easy to read. It's not full of any technical jargon that may be contained in your research paper. It's not full of any information that, the average layman wouldn't understand as far as whatever the topic is that you're covering. So you have to keep the language very simple. And of course, it covers the important points that you're trying to make in your research paper. Now, where does it go? And I'm pretty sure I mentioned this before. It is, and even before right now, it is the second page of the research paper. And, like I said before, this is why students sometimes get a little confused, because they think it's the second page of the research paper. So I have to do, it's right after the cover page. So I have to do it first, when in actuality, we do this last. But we place it second behind the cover page in the actual research paper. Now, how long should it be? And this is a really important point. The abstract should not go over 300 words. The sweet spot is between 250 and 300 words. Now, with a length that size, should really indicate to you the importance of not going into any details. Now, that's going to be 250 to 300 words covered over about 3 paragraphs. And my suggestion is this: if you are tasked with writing an abstract, just go ahead and write it. Okay, you finish your research paper, so you already have a lot of knowledge about what you have covered or discovered in your research. Just go ahead and write the abstract without thinking about the word limit. And then once you have done that, you're going to find that you probably closer to 500-600 words. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to go back and you're going to do some combining and making things concise, combining sentences, taking out unnecessary phrases, unnecessary words, finding something that you try to explain, trying to find a word that would explain it. It's all about condensing and making it less. But I want you to remember this point. It cannot be over 300 words. It cannot be over 300 words. So anyone tasked with the objective or the responsibility of writing an abstract, they're not going to have a lot. It's not going to be difficult in coming up with the word count. What the difficult thing is going to be is going over the word count and then, trying to, combine things and take things out and edit things to bring it back to where it should be. And that is between 250 and 300 words over 3 paragraphs. Okay, so writing an abstract involves this: summarizing the whole research paper. Once again, without going into any details. Now, you have to start with a draft of the complete research paper. So that means that you or your group has pretty much finished writing the research paper outside of, doing some touch-ups. I suggest writing the abstract when you are completing the second revision. Okay, that's the revision before the final paper. So you got a first revision, a second revision, and then the final. So after you have collected the information you need to improve your paper after the first revision, and you go in, or your group goes in and you do the second revision, after that second revision is complete, pretty much that's how your research paper is going to look in the final. So that's the time to write the abstract. By then you have a really good idea of everything that has been involved in writing the research paper. You have a really good idea of the position or the discovery that you were trying to discover. So now it's time to write the abstract. And of course, you have pretty much done most, if not all, of the research. So you have a really good idea of what it took to write the research paper. That's when it is time, in my opinion, to write the abstract. Okay, so you want to provide as much essential information as possible without going into a bunch of details. I have to say it again. You can't go into details because of the amount of words that you are limited to. So, but I guess that probably would be the challenge when you go back to edit it if you took my advice, which is write it without thinking about the word count. Okay, so here are 10 steps to writing an abstract. Okay, so take attention to the first three, because essentially the first three steps here are really going to be the first three the three paragraphs of the abstract. First, you're going to identify the major objectives. That is the issue, the question, the main ideas. That's going to be the first step, which essentially is what the first paragraph is going to contain. Then you're going to identify what you had to do to accomplish your research, which is the scope, and that is going to be essentially the second paragraph of the abstract. And that's when you go into, what you had to do, what you had to research, and what you had to read or watch or hear in order to do the research for your research paper. And then 3, identify the major results or the conclusions, because of course you're doing a research, you're doing a study. So you have to have a conclusion to whatever your position was at the beginning. All right. So you're going to take those 3 paragraphs, you're going to assemble them in the order that it is here. This is the order, steps 1, 2, and 3. That's the order in which your paragraph should be in. Then, of course, you're going to, state your hypotheses in the first sentence, not talking about your thesis statement. Be careful. Okay, you're not going to put your thesis statement in the abstract. It's just your hypotheses. What you assumed from what the question that you were given. Okay, so do not include background information, literary reviews, or any outside sources in your abstract. Like I said before, staying away from details. And the golden rule, one of the golden rules, is you're not going to use outside sources when you write your abstract. But let me emphasize this right now. Of course, the abstract has to be in the MLA format, but you definitely want to stay away from parenthetical documentation because you're not supposed to be using any sources, outside sources in the abstract. Okay, so when you're doing the editing, if you're taking my advice and you're just writing without thinking about the word count, you're going to remove extra words or phrases. You're going to revise the 3 paragraphs to make sure they convey the essential information. You don't want to edit out the important stuff. You want to make sure you're just editing out the fluff and the unnecessary phrases that we often use when we're writing. Okay, so you want to check to see if it meets the 3 elements. And I'm about to show you what the 3 elements are of an abstract in just a second. And of course, you want to give the abstract to someone else. If you're in a group, that's easy. Have all the members of the group to read it so that they can determine whether or not what you wrote was sufficient based on what the research paper covers. 3 elements. So here are the 3 elements the abstract should have in order for it to be proper. Now, I tried to put these in the order of the paragraphs, the 3 paragraphs that make up the abstract. So the first paragraph, of course, is going to be about the research question that you had to investigate. Essentially, that's the main idea. And then the second is going to be the scope, what you had to do in order to do the research. And of course, the third paragraph, or the third element, is going to be the conclusion, what you concluded through your research. So we got the main idea, what you had to do, and of course, what you discovered. Those are the 3 elements of an abstract, and I put it in the same order in which you should have the paragraph. So that first paragraph should cover the research question or the main idea. The second paragraph should cover